All right, so the medium-term budget policy statement is expected to be delivered next month, and this is the first one under a government of national unity. So what can we expect? Tshepo Mongoai, SABC economics editor, joins us live now. Tshepo, of course, a lot of people are looking at the government of national unity to see what happens with this one. But I mean, if we take a step back to even last year's statement, you think about the fact that we were being told about, you know, the economic outlook, which remains weak somewhat, but also at the same time, there were power cuts that we were talking about at the time. There was quite a lot going on. Are we on a bit of a better footing now?
I think economically, in terms of the outlook, we are seeing some improvement, but I don't think that would be enough to arrest the serious financial challenges that our fiscal framework is facing currently. So it's going to be a tough one. Already, you can see the impact of those budget cuts. And if you are spending about over 60% on your social wages, it's obvious that that will be the first area that you're going to deal with in order to reduce. No matter how hard you try to protect, as they say, those frontline services, there's definitely an impact. Last week we saw the education minister coming out. That's a massive shortfall of around 118 billion rand up to 2027. So you can see the impact is really starting to bite. And it's not just that, health as well. And what is even worse is that the health is facing a lot of cases and litigations, you know, with regard to medical negligence. And that is taking away much needed resources away, and it will be quite interesting to find out how much are they spending on those medical negligent cases, and we already know the amount is running into billions as we speak, and it is the provincial government that have to set aside resources that probably they were not even allocated for. They have to find that money. But the other issue is that government department had ample time to deal with cut wasteful expenditures, find areas that they can cut. And I don't think there was a willingness as much, or taking that call seriously, particularly coming from the budget process, but also coming from the National Treasury. So now the National Treasury is actually coming with an axe and say, you know, these are the realities that we are facing at the moment. The tax that we are collecting, it will be interesting to see if it's still on the mark. I think it's about 1.8 trillion rand that we should. There was an additional 15 billion rand additional tax that they had to raise. I don't think that will be quite enough, but perhaps maybe that what could help is that the SRD grants are coming to an end, so that will alleviate a bit of pressure on the fiscus. There are some creative ways that they are looking at in terms of funding infrastructure. They are looking at concessionary loans. Maybe that will bring in some relief. We don't know.
And of course, you talk about, you know, the issue of cuts and where the department were expected to, you know, really just play with the numbers around there. But there's also something else that the minister, the basic education minister, raised when we were in conversation with her. It's the issue of some of the departments or some of the provinces, in fact, sending money back when that money should be allocated for one thing or the next. And I suppose that's also where the big chunk of the problem sometimes even, you know, starts.
I think conditional grants, money that's ring-fenced, especially at municipalities. You find that even provinces, they probably don't have capacity to deliver on those projects, and there are time lags. Or, you know, and as a result, that's money that eventually goes back to National Treasury. So the issue of skills and capacity, it remains a major issue, especially at municipal level. And they are really feeling it at municipalities. We are going to see provinces and municipalities really squeezing the households because they are really under pressure. There's going to be a lot of unconventional ways and means to raise money because they need money. In the past, we were told that they used to take this ring-fenced funding, that which some of it they couldn't spend, and use it for their cash flows. And I think the laws is really getting much stricter in terms of consequences for that. So they are no longer able to do that. They have to think out of the box. But there's a risk here, and which National Treasury is also acknowledging, that here you have municipalities that rely heavily on electricity tariffs. And you have that is dwindling, it's fading as a main source of revenue. So there must be a way of helping these municipalities come up with a funding model that will actually get. Remember, in terms of division of revenue, municipalities don't really get much from the national fiscus. They have to raise most of the money within their means, and they're not able to do that. If you see big provinces like Gauteng and Joburg struggling, they have a lot of multiple revenue sources. They have more cars that they can actually get money from in terms of disc renewals and licensing, unlike other provinces, but they are still struggling. So it could be worse for provinces that don't have the same luxuries as your Gauteng.
And especially because they talk about these municipalities and how they need to continue to generate revenue. But when we look at the country's debt levels and the servicing of the debt, how are we doing?
Yes, that's another issue. In fact, there's a risk to the fiscals. The risk is the debt service cost that is at around, I think, 380 billion rand. And our debt stock in total, I think, is around 5 trillion rand. So we are told that for every I think on 1 rand, 20 cent is actually servicing the debt. So we are told that they will try to contain that to around 75% of GDP in the next year or two. The initial figure was 77%. We don't know if they will be able to arrest this. They've, you remember there was GFECRA that added 30 billion rand over the medium-term expenditure framework over 3 years budgeting cycle, in order to reduce our debt to GDP so that it's more manageable. But the question is, will we be able to arrest that? I mean, we're paying a lot at 380 billion rand. Our debt requirements about 470 billion rand. So we are taking away resources. I mean, if you look at, for example, just on the amount that we are spending on debt can actually finance departments. And that money, instead of helping to finance the total budget of a particular department or two, it's actually going into paying that debt.
And as you say, that's quite a big risk, Tshepo. And of course, there is another issue that I'm expecting. They are likely to talk about how things have improved in that regard, and that is electricity, because the electricity supply issue has been a big one. And I remember in last year's statement, it was quite huge as well.
No, absolutely. I think that helps, especially in improving the economic outlook. I think the electricity is going to be a big one. But the sad reality, remember there was a debt relief for municipality. That doesn't seem to be working. There are about 80 municipalities that underwent that program. And if you look at it, at the time when they started with this program, I think the municipalities were owing between 50 and 60 billion rand. That amount has went up to 80 billion rand as we speak, simply because it has not been efficient. Of course, in terms of those who have enrolled for prepaid, because the one way was that you need to enroll people on prepaid, improve your collections, and then there will be some amnesty. But the number is quite small. Not only those who participated, but those who seems to be making inroads on that particular program. Eskom as well. Remember, of the MTBPS was promised, I think it was 254 billion rand. They also did not meet all the conditions of that grant over the 3-year period. I think there was an issue with the sale of one of the investment company that did not happen, so they will not receive the the full amount. But that aside, in terms of electricity, I think there's a lot of progress.
It's going to be an interesting one. Tshepo, thank you so much for that update there. That's my colleague Tshepo Mongoai, who's our SABC economics editor. And of course, we're looking ahead at the medium-term budget policy statement.